This book, actually, when I first received it from Sheela, it was a reminder of the classics we used to handle, or even maybe a copy of the Bible or the Zen Avastha, and or Arabian Nights. So why this choice of cover?
This is published by the Writers' Workshop, Calcutta, and from 1948, at which time this was a very stylish thing to do, to have gold letters in this particular font. And they choose this fabric, which is hand woven, and this book is hand bound. It's not bound on a machine. This, if you see a book that looks like this, you know that it is published by the Writers' Workshop. It could be fiction, or it could be a novel, or it could be poems.
Well, it's a great delight to hold this in your hand. A book that is itself a kind of object of beauty is, it serves itself, even before you open the pages. And I have been very happily guilty of buying books just because I like the cover. And I would do that for this one. And then we come to what comes inside it, which is even more delightful. So it's a great pleasure to hold this in my hand, because I have gone through the book, but in a PDF version, which is really no way to look at a book. And now I can, have the delight of actually turning its pages and having that very fresh smell of a, newly minted book, which is quite incomparable. Perhaps you could just introduce, what you have in the book to the audience, or how you conceived of it, and maybe even read a few poems.
Okay, so during the lockdown, I've never really written in verse, but since I've never been a literature student, I don't understand free verse very much. I am that ringa ringa roses, that I need that rhythm and rhyme if it has to be a poem. So during the lockdown, it so happened that there was a Facebook group which was named Simple Recipes for Complicated Times. And it was full of humor. I've never seen recipe writers so creative. And in that, I started writing recipes in verse. And from that, it moved on to verses, which included other experiences of mine. I used to work in a hospital, and so that came naturally to me. And now I work in a school, so that also came naturally to me. So I have written about inoculations, about what happens inside an operating theater. I am not naturally inclined to write about philosophical things or nature. That doesn't come easily to me. What does come easily to me is what I did this morning, and as an administrator, what I see in the register, that comes easily to me. And so the poems, this was almost like a poem a day, because I had nothing else to do. And so the poems came out of the experiences that I had. The language is more or less in rhythm and rhyme. And I have used English as I speak it in India. It is not English, it is Indian English. So there are a lot of Marathi words, there are a lot of Hindi words which come naturally to me when I speak. And therefore, I have written it in that language. And so I called it Indlish Poems, Indlish. Okay, so my favorite is what I will start with. Adrak is what in Hindi is known, we call ginger. Adrak. So this is adrak to flavor a sweet. So when you use adrak to put in tea, you crush it or kiss it or cuss it. How you say it depends upon which part of the country you're from. Adrak can be slivered to garnish chana with puri. Adrak can be ground for chicken and curry. Adrak is good for a throat that is sore. Adrak is added to dishes for flavor. Have you thought of a drak in a sweet, where a drak mithai does meet? Take a drak that is 1 finger long and 2 fingers thick. Skin it, hack it, toss it in mixer with milk. 3 tablespoons grind to a very fine paste. Measure the mixture. Take 3 times that sugar. Remember, a drak has very strong taste. Cook the whole thing until it well cooks. When it hardens and changes its looks, grease a pan and upon it spread the above. Sprinkle elaichi nutmeg powder all over with love. When cool but still warm, in rhomboids cut it. It's good for digestion, say people who've tried it. A drug is good for the cough and the cold. A drug is good for the young and the old. A drug adds zing to many a thing. The best, if you ask me, and I can't tell you why, on a heavy monsoon day is a drug in your chai.
So, what I really loved about this book is a very keen sense of observation of the everyday. And I think that is what probably makes contemporary poetry both relatable and necessary, that we talk about the world that we live in. And I think, Sheela, what you have done is exactly that. You know, you talk about your own world, you talk about the things that happen within the world. And in one sense, when you do something like this, I've also felt that it is universal in the sense that it will last over a period of time. Should we come back to this book, say, in 75 years' time, we will get a wonderful cross-section of life as it is today. And I think that itself is a necessary activity of poets, that we need. It is a document of the world today. And this is something that will be looked upon and looked back upon, I think, very intently as time passes. So whereas for today, it's a wonderful event and they're lovely poems and we can enjoy them. But for the future, there will be people who would both enjoy the poems, but also get a feel for what it was, say, in 2023. And I think that is important. And I must say that this is not done enough. And it would be so nice if more poets, did this as part of their poetic practice. So it's just a thought.
Thank you. The other thing what I liked about it, the poetry, Sheela's poetry is not like poetry at all. It doesn't have the burden of, on the reader to try and understand, to decipher, to read between the lines. It's not heavy at all. And even having said that, there are so many stories in there, especially about illness, about the operation theatre, for example. The operation theatre poem is really something. It's from the surgeon's point of view, to the ward boy's point of view, to the patient's point of view, what each one is thinking, what's going on in their heads, and you're in this whirlwind. And nobody ever thinks, what is this poor patient thinking of? Lying over there on the operation, on the OT table, and being mauled and cut up and stitched up and gagged and anesthetized and whatnot. But Sheela's gone through every person's point of view. Am I right?
Patients being mauled and gagged and everything makes it sound a little morbid. But quite honestly, 99.99 of patients who go into hospitals actually go there to get cured and they come back better. So this is a rare example, very rare example of a patient who died on the table, or he was a high-risk case, somebody known to us, and sometime during the lockdown, he underwent a surgery, and yes, he did die on the table. And what happened was, some people said, oh, this is the doctor's fault, they want to make a lot of money. And then others said that, you all shouldn't have done it, you should have tried homeopathy, naturopathy, whatever it was. But the fact is, when things go wrong in a hospital, it affects everyone, from the ward boy to the patient's relatives. Everybody is upset. When a patient goes out of the hospital, actually there is not a sense of rejoicing, but there is, you're happy. You don't want to, this is one industry where you don't want to see your customer come back. Nobody goes to a hospital willingly. Okay? So I'll just read. So yes, there was the patient's point of view when I died, the spouse's version, the registrar's view, and what the well-wishers said. Okay, so I will read to you.
Before you read, I'd just like to make one point. This is something that is called the Rashomon effect. Rashomon is this very famous film by Akira Kurosawa, where a, a single event that happens in a day is, repeated through the film from the point of view of 4 different observers. Okay, and that makes the understanding of that event even more complex and less cut and dried. The more you see that. I do not remember seeing the Rashomon effect used in a poem, and I'm so glad that we can see it here.
So I will just read to you the registrar's point of view. It was sudden. All were briefed on what to do, observe, expect. I was by the console staring at the glowing screen. The entire effect of a live supra major plus surgery can't on a simulator be seen. Nothing prepares one for 17 degrees Celsius. The gleaming high-tech tools wrapped in green. The little holes in between the ribs. The long, thin, wiry probes, fingers steady. The nurses in position to get set and go. Skilled technicians all ready to do their bit to make this patient's life whole again. We study our cases in detail, their discomfort, their pain, go through causes and solutions, discussions, preparations, sharing diagnosis, prognosis, debating procedures, balancing medications. In spite of all the care taken, the unpredicted happens. Things went wrong that day. Everything seemed smooth. Pincers, forceps, swab. Heard someone say, "No, no, no." A fluster of activity followed. Dr. X took over. An anesthetist swiveled. A nurse flung out the crash trolley cover. I don't know when or why the patient bled. At that moment, the patient was possibly dead. 12 hours total. Comatose, went the patient to the ICU, hooked to life-supporting apparatus, pallid skin tinged blue. What now? What to do?
So you can read this poem, through 4 points of view. I think each part begins with the same sentence. Suddenly he died. And yeah, it was sudden. It was sudden, and that becomes then the starting point, which then kind of opens out in a completely different way. This is a unique poem, of course, but then there are several other poems which are there in this book which talk about the perspective of life in a hospital. And over there too, you can see a lot of in-depth observation. As you can also see, I think, the poems of life in a corporate world, So you talk of presentations and, the things that go into that, which are also, very acute when it comes to observation. And what you were saying is absolutely right, You don't have to go very deep or try and unravel things. It's all there. And you can instantly relate. And I think that is what makes this book particularly lovely.
So I'll read one verse from to sell one's soul to a corporate goal. So 2 of the places that I worked in were corporate offices. And I realized that many of us actually straddle 2 worlds. One is the AC'd world with the computers and very high-tech things. And then over the weekend, people go on hikes, or over their vacations, they go to the mountains or the seashore. And so they want to enjoy nature, but they also want to enjoy office life. You can't do one without the other. So this poem came because one of my staff, she said to me, in Marathi, she said, "The sky was the color of my computer screen when I switched Windows on." And this was a girl who was very fond of hiking, etc. But she was comparing something outside and natural to a little window screen. And that's where this poem came from. It is a very long poem. It was written when I was invited to the Mussoorie 2010 Mountain Literature Festival. I'm reading one verse from it. We were the smart guys who'd sold our souls to competitive, challenging corporate goals. The staff bus took us to Dadar. To Mettupalayam, we went by train. Then a swaying bus over winding roads, nausea driving us insane. The HR guy lied. Nothing thrilling about living in a three-man tent. Tell me, what's fun about feeling through packed haversacks for things you can't find, can't see? About not being able to scratch where it itches, bound up in a slippery sleeping bag? Aching knees, smelling socks, blistered toes, annoying mates, sweaters that tag? We were no longer the toughies who'd sold their souls to what seemed from here comfy corporate goals.
Could you read another poem? And I think that is the first one. The Insides of Family Life, Middle Class Mumbai, 1960s.
Okay, even the dedication, by the way, is written in verse, just to let you know. So the insides of family life, middle class Mumbai, the 1960s. My grandma in bed in paralytic unhappiness, my mother unable to leave her unattended, the kind and affectionate servant who would take me to the nearby beach to play in sand, tell me about the gods, my people, and her family. The next door loankers who taught me to follow the rules by keeping footwear outside their door, or the host coats who kept me curious. Their kitchen didn't smell of fish and coconut oil, or the Ayers who had 6 children, one severely disabled, who we respectfully called Dada, or the Mali's family who lived in a single room under the stairway, who cared for the building, who were cared for by the tenants. I paid Lagori, Hututu, and skipped on a naked road. No cars were parked. None could afford them then. I didn't know who was Sequera, who Levy, Shah, or Sheikh. Now I know. That time our parents didn't care much about who ate what or spoke which tongue. If one grazed a knee, the closest adult gave a biscuit, patted the bottom, and sent one off. That Bombay has long gone.
It's absolutely lovely because that is one Bombay which we all recognize, and we don't see that.
Mustansir reminds me of Damodar Mauzo's story, in which two little girls who are good friends in school, one shares her tiffin with the other, not realizing that she's given her beef to eat, and then the guilt that the other little girl goes through. It's really, comes to that. When we were growing up, I grew up in Baroda, for example, born in Pune, grew up in Baroda. We never knew who our school friends were, what caste, what religion they followed, or anything. If we went to a Muslim friend, Yasmin's house, I remember eating in a big thal without even thinking twice that, oh, this is a different community altogether.
When we talk about English, it's not too far away from translations. And because she mentioned 2 little girls, I have to mention this instance of 2 little girls playing and talking in Marathi. Aga, less manje kami, ani more manje peacock. So there is a cross connection in language, and it happens all over India all the time. Yes.
I think that is, in one sense, a very central idea. We are in this very, very unique position in our country where almost all of us are multilingual. Okay?
South of the Vindhyas.
And as you said, in the same sentence, we can have 3 languages, as you have just demonstrated. And everybody understands. Okay? It is comprehensible to all. So then, therefore, why not write in that? And I think, I try to do it. I have friends who write poetry in Marathi who try to do it. And you have tried to do it as well. And that is that you don't bother about which language you are writing in. Just as you didn't bother about which religion your friends were from. And you don't have to get overtly, you don't have to get too stickly about this. And you let your language flow. You are ostensibly writing in English, but if English becomes Marathi at a point, or Gujarati at another point, or Konkani at another point, you just let it. Okay, and you would realize that most of your readers, unless you are publishing in the US, which would be a different thing, if you are publishing in India, most of your readers would get it. They would understand it. And they would be able to not only get it, they would appreciate it, and there would be a big smile on their face because they would recognize that this is the way they speak. Okay, I remember now one poem from Arun Kolatkar, from his book Arun Kolatkar Cha Kavita, and it is a poem called Happy New Year. Okay, and the entire poem is in Hindi. Okay, it is now. Which language is this poem written in? Right? The book is a Marathi book. All the poems are in Marathi. This one poem is in Hindi. It is in the typical, taxi driver's Bombaya Hindi. And he's talking about a pretty gruesome event that happens on New Year. The title of the poem is Happy New Year. So the point is that it doesn't matter. Okay? And we don't have to kind of stick labels to things. So here is nice. This is the first book of Indlish Poems. I look at it as an exercise in multilinguality, which is special to us. And please keep doing that. We don't have to account for ourselves to anybody when we mix our languages.
I also think Google has come to the rescue in a lot of ways, If you don't, earlier we used to say, oh my God, I have to translate bhakri and bhaji. And how am I going to say bhakri and bhaji in English for a person to understand what it means and the cultural significance of being offered bhakri and bhaji in a Maharashtra village. But if I say bhakri and bhaji now and Google it, if I don't know Marathi, I'll be able to get it. So that is the
advantage. I think when we had done that presentation on translation, that was one of my questions. How do you translate ushta? There are certain things untranslatable.
Yeah, but so what I do when I need to do something like that is I have a glossary at the end. And in which case I talk a little bit about the concept of ushta. So I don't translate ushta. If I have to do it, I'll probably put the word ushta even in English. And then put it in a glossary.
Sometimes, like again at that same presentation, in English you may have tablet, pill and capsule. But when you translate it into an Indian language, it becomes goli. You cannot actually differentiate between the three.
Then you use the English one.
Yes. I would.
You don't worry about these things. You choose something that will get your message across. Right? Whether it is in English or whatever language it is.
And get the cultural context.
And get the cultural
very,
context
very
across. Yeah. I know one thing because I do translations, when you're translating from one language to the other, and I translate into English mostly, the number of words just explode. Yeah, in Marathi, what you can say in 2 words would require 20 in English. And we know that is a necessary occupational hazard of people who translate. I call it the zip file effect. It's like a zip file. From Marathi, when you go to English, it's that zip file just opens up like that, and suddenly it's full of MBs and KBs, which you have to handle in English. But yeah, well, that's how it is. The question is, or the tougher thing is, and I know this because I translate the Marathi poems of Hemant Divte. Okay, and Hemant Divte writes Marathi like this. Okay, Marathlish, if you like. How do you translate that into English? When half the words in his poem are in English in any case. So those are choices you make. So then sometimes you do the reverse, you leave some of the Marathi words in the English translation. And if it is that complicated, you provide a glossary in the end. In fact, there is one more thing, and I think we should do this as a matter of principle. And that is not italicize foreign words at all. The italicized words in a sense are made unduly exotic, or they are othered, that ye English mein nahi hai, and I think maybe as a matter of principle we shouldn't probably do that, and let's see how it works. If the reader has to take the effort, so be it. Okay, the reader always has to take the effort. Isn't that what we learn in what is rasa theory? The rasika is the more important person than the artist, the connoisseur. It's the connoisseur who is the person who understands best that which they are appreciating. So if a reader has to take the efforts, okay, the reader will take the efforts. This book has what I can call a world first, okay, or some world firsts.
I think that's a pretty bold claim because
Yeah,
a lot
of
people have written in Indlish, even when I was in
that
college.
That is not the world first. Okay, this is a world first book which has the recipe of dadpe pohe in verse. And the wonderful thing about this book is there are at least 4 or 5 recipe poems which are a great delight to read. Yes, yes, absolutely. And I will ask Sheela to read at least 1 or 2 of them.
No, I will read from Prudent. Okay, it starts off, sister to neither flaky parathas nor rustic bhakri, though born through a latna and raised on a tawa. That's how it begins. And somewhere in between, I will just tell you that once the dal is cooked, you have to strain it. And the liquid, the dal is separate and ground and stuffed into the puran puri, but the liquid is made into curry. And then the remaining dal, you recook it with sugar till it achieves a certain consistency. So I'm reading about that. School the curd, that is the liquid. School the curd with souring agents, various masalas, jaggery and salt. Then season with mustard seeds, hing and curry leaves. It will graduate to a delectable soup. The estranged, now dry dal can go back into the heavy-bottomed pressure cooker with a new mate, sugar. The lovemaking is violent. The hot viscous drops can hit the ceiling or your eye, splatter on the wall behind the gas stove. Sprinkle some haldi for auspiciousness. When they blend, test by standing in a wooden spatula or spoon into it. If it falls not, the deed is done. Gnash that mixture whilst warm. Mash it, bash it, grind it to a fine paste with whatever instrument of torture you own, old stone grinder or modern mixer. It is said that to reach heaven, first you must die. Swarga milayla adhi marawa lagta.
Pohe or flattened rice of various kinds are found. Some are long, nylon thin, others thick and nearly round. Pohe can be for chivda fried or washed and soaked in sweetened milk. Eat them like corn or wheat flakes or others of that ilk. For dadpe pohe you will need 4 fistfuls for 2 of any thickish pohe, unpolished will also do. Rinse them well and keep them aside. 1 onion chop, 2 chilies slice, some ginger grate, cut dhania leaves, grate some coconut fresh and nice. Mix everything with the damp pohe, add sugar, salt and lime, throw in tomato bits and leave it all covered for some time. Heat a little oil in a vessel shallow, let mustard seeds splutter in it, add a pinch of hing, toss in curry leaves, whole or crushed a bit. Switch off the heat and turn the pohe in the vessel upside down. The pohe into the vessel go. Don't give me that confused frown. Keep covered for a minute, then garnish with more coriander and a tablespoon or so, of course, roasted groundnut powder. No cooking involved in dadpe pohe. In a dish, it is a meal, takes little time and effort, gives one a wholesome feel.
Bolo bolo dadpe pohe ki jai. Chawal put dadpe pohe ki jai.